The betting hall of Station Zephyr 9 reeked of sweat, desperation, and the peculiar metallic tang of alien blood. Neon lights flickered overhead, casting sickly purple shadows across the crowded amphitheater where species from across the galaxy gathered to watch violence unfold. Tonight, however, the violence would be different. Tonight, it would be educational. Chen adjusted the worn leather wraps around her knuckles, her dark eyes scanning the jeering crowd above. 3 years she had been stuck on this godforsaken trading post. 3 years since the Terran embassy had mysteriously lost her transfer request, and 3 years of listening to every alien species in the galaxy mock humanity's supposed weakness. "Look at the little pink thing," screeched a Vorthan merchant, his forearms gesticulating wildly. No claws, no venom, no natural weapons. How did such pathetic creatures ever leave their home world? Maya's lips curved into a predatory smile. Oh, how she loved proving people wrong. The announcer, a bloated hegemony official named Korex, waddled to the center of the fighting pit. His translator collar crackled with static as he addressed the crowd. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished non-binary entities, tonight we witness something unprecedented in the annals of Station Zephyr 9's fighting pits." The crowd's roar was deafening. Credits changed hands faster than lightspeed communications as bookmakers adjusted their odds. The human was listed at 15,000 to 1 against. Maya found that personally insulting. She should have been at least 20,000 to 1. Our challengers tonight represent 3 of the most formidable warrior species in known space. Korex continued, his voice booming through the arena speakers. First, standing 8 feet tall and weighing in at 400 pounds, the Kalari champion Thax Bloodripper, a massive reptilian creature, emerged from the opposite tunnel. His scales gleamed like polished obsidian, and razor-sharp claws extended from each of his 6 limbs. Tribal scars covered his hide in intricate patterns, each one representing a life taken in combat. The crowd cheered appreciatively. Maya yawned. Theatrically. Second, the pride of the Nexary Death Worlds, Zix the Bonebreaker. The announcer's voice reached a fever pitch as a 10-foot-tall, insectoid warrior clicked into view. Her exoskeleton bore the deep grooves of countless battles, and her mandibles dripped with paralyzing venom. For blade-tipped arms swayed hypnotically as she surveyed her prey. The betting odds shifted again. Now Maya was at 17,000 to 1. And finally, representing the warrior monks of Altair Prime, Master Keth Stormwind. The crowd fell silent as a humanoid figure glided into the arena. Tall and ethereally thin, his skin seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. Psychic warriors were rare, and their telekinetic abilities had ended more fights before they began than any weapon ever forged. Maya cracked her neck and rolled her shoulders. 3 opponents. No weapons. No armor. No problem. And their opponent. Korex paused with dramatic effect. The human known as Chen. The crowd's reaction was underwhelming. A few scattered boos, some derisive laughter, and one drunk Zephyrian who shouted something anatomically impossible about humans and their supposed mating habits. Maya stepped forward, all 5 feet 6 inches of her, and waved cheerfully at the crowd. "Evening, everyone. Lovely night for a massacre, isn't it?" Thax Bloodripper snorted, a sound like steam escaping from a broken engine. "Little meat thing speaks. How adorable. I will make your death quick, soft skin. It is kindness I show only to younglings and the mentally defective." "How thoughtful of you," Maya replied, her voice dripping with false gratitude. "And here I was planning to take my time with you. Guess we all have to make sacrifices." Zix clicked her mandibles together in what passed for laughter among her species. Human arrogance is well documented, but this exceeds all parameters. You bring no weapons, no armor, no enhancements. How do you expect to survive the next 30 seconds? Maya's smile widened. "Honey, 30 seconds? I'm insulted. I was planning on wrapping this up in 10. The psychic monk, Keth, remained silent, but his eyes began to glow with an inner light. Telekinetic energy rippled around him like heat waves rising from sun-baked sand. "The rules are simple," Korex announced. "No weapons, no external enhancements, no outside interference. The match continues until one side yields, is incapacitated, or dies. Combatants, take your positions. The four fighters arranged themselves in a rough square, Maya at one corner, facing her three opponents. The crowd held its collective breath. Credits worth more than most planetary budgets hung in the balance. Begin! Korex screamed. What happened next would be discussed in bars, trading posts, and diplomatic circles across the galaxy for decades to come. The three alien warriors moved as one, their coordination speaking to hours of preparation and tactical planning. Thax charged straight ahead, his claws extended and murder in his reptilian eyes. Zix darted to the left, her blade arms weaving hypnotic patterns as she sought to flank the human. Keth remained stationary, his psychic powers reaching out like invisible tentacles to crush his prey. Maya moved. No, that was insufficient description for what the human female did. Maya flowed. She became liquid violence. Poetry written in motion, death dancing to a rhythm only she could hear. Keth struck first, his telekinetic force slamming down where Maya had been standing a microsecond earlier. The reinforced floor cracked under the psychic assault, spiderweb fractures spreading outward like a frozen explosion. But Maya was no longer there. She had dropped her knees and slid forward, using her momentum to carry her directly into Thax's charge. The massive Kalahari, expecting her to dodge backward or to the sides, was caught completely off guard as a human rolled between his legs. As she passed beneath him, Maya's hand shot upward, her fingertips, hardened by years of martial arts training, struck with surgical precision. She hit the nerve cluster just behind Thax's left knee, the one anatomical weakness every Kalahari warrior spent years learning to protect. The effect was immediate and devastating. Thax's leg went completely numb, his massive frame crashing to the arena floor with sound like a small building collapsing. But Maya wasn't finished with him. Rolling to her feet behind the fallen warrior, she grabbed Thax's tail with both hands. The crowd gasped as she began to spin, using the reptilian's own body weight against him. Round and round she went, building momentum, until she released her grip and sent all 400 pounds of confused Kalahari flying directly into the path of the charging Zix. The collision was spectacular. Exoskeleton met scale in a shower of sparks and alien curses, as both warriors crashed to the ground in a tangle of limbs. Zix's venomous mandibles, meant to pierce Maya's soft human flesh, instead sank deep into Thax's thick hide. The paralytic toxin meant for their human prey began working immediately on the Kalahari champion. But Maya was already moving again. Keth, realizing that brute force wouldn't work against this impossibly fast human, had switched tactics. Instead of trying to crush her with raw telekinetic power, he began hurling debris from the damaged arena floor. Chunks of metal and concrete flew through the air like missiles, each one guided by his psychic abilities. Maya danced between projectiles, her body moving with inhuman grace. She bent backward as a piece of reinforced steel whistled over her head, twisted aside as a chunk of concrete shattered against the wall behind her, and actually caught one smaller piece of debris that Keth had thrown, spinning around and hurling it back at him with interest. The psychic monk deflected his own projectile with contemptuous ease, but the momentary distraction cost him dearly. Maya had used those precious microseconds to close the distance between them. Keth raised both hands, gathering his telekinetic powers for one final, crushing blow that would reduce the human to component atoms. Energy crackled around his fingers as reality itself bent to his will. Maya smiled at him sweetly and spoke two words that would echo through the galaxy's fighting circuits for generations to come. Too slow. Her fist connected with Keth's solar plexus just as he released his psychic attack. The timing was perfect, deliberately calculated. The monk's own telekinetic energy, meant to destroy Maya, instead turned inward as his concentration shattered. The feedback was instantaneous and brutal. Keth Stormwind, master of the psychic arts, veteran of 1,000 battles, telekinetic warrior without equal, crumpled to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut. His own power, redirected by Maya's precisely timed strike, had knocked him unconscious. The arena fell silent. Completely, utterly silent. 10,000 alien spectators stared in shock at the human female standing calmly in the center of the fighting pit, surrounded by three unconscious opponents. Maya brushed an imaginary speck of dust from her shoulder and looked up at the crowd. Well, that was fun, she said conversationally. Anyone else have questions about human combat capabilities? The silence stretched on for another heartbeat. Then another. Then the arena exploded into chaos. Impossible, screamed a hegemony official. Humans are weak, physically inferior. This must be some kind of trick. The human used no weapons, shouted a Vorthan merchant who had just lost his life savings. No enhancements. How is this possible? Maya walked over to where Grex the announcer stood, his mouth hanging open in shock. She tapped the microphone to make sure it was still working. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished non-binary entities, she said, perfectly mimicking the announcer's earlier words. Allow me to introduce you to something your species seem to have forgotten in all your technological advancement. She paused for dramatic effect, her eyes scanning the crowd. Technique. The word hung in the air like a challenge. You see, Maya continued, her voice carrying clearly through the arena speakers, while you've all been busy developing bigger claws, stronger exoskeletons, and fancier psychic powers, humans have been perfecting something far more dangerous. Another pause. The crowd hung on her every word. We've been learning how to fight smart. She gestured to the three unconscious warriors around her. Thax over there? Impressive physical specimens, the Kalahari. But they rely too heavily on intimidation and brute force. Hit the right pressure point, and all that muscle becomes a liability. Maya walked over to where Zix lay tangled with the paralyzed Thax. The Nexari are fantastic warriors. Don't get me wrong. Those blade arms of theirs are works of art. But they're also slaves to their predatory instincts. Present them with the right opportunity, and they'll charge straight into a trap. Finally, she stopped beside the unconscious Keth. And psychic warriors? They're used to opponents who try to match power with power, force with force. They're not prepared for someone who uses their own strength against them. The crowd was beginning to murmur, alien voices rising in confusion and indignation. This proves nothing, called out a hegemony admiral from his private box. You faced only 3 opponents. Any one of our species could field a dozen warriors. Maya's smile was sharp enough to cut starship hull. Is that a challenge, Admiral? The crowd noise died again. All eyes turned to the hegemony official, a blue-skinned humanoid whose chest was covered in military decorations. Admiral Korex stood slowly, his forearms crossed over his barrel chest. Perhaps it is human. Perhaps it is. The tension in the arena was thick enough to slice with a plasma cutter. Admiral Korex descended from his private box, his ornate military uniform gleaming under the harsh lights. Behind him came his personal guard, each one a hand-picked killer from across hegemony space. Maya watched them approach with the casual interest of someone observing an interesting but ultimately harmless insect. How many friends are you bringing to this party, Admiral? 12 of my finest, Korex replied, his voice carrying the arrogance that came with commanding fleets across a galaxy. Surely that should be sufficient to demonstrate the superiority of hegemony military training over human. What did you call it? Technique? The crowd was going wild. Bookmakers scrambled to adjust odds that had become completely meaningless. No one had ever seen anything like this before. 1 human female against 12 elite hegemony warriors? It was either going to be the greatest upset in galactic history, or the quickest massacre ever recorded. Maya cracked her knuckles methodically, each joint popping with an audible snap. 12, huh? You know, Admiral, I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I'm starting to worry you're not taking this seriously. The warriors arrayed themselves around the arena floor. Each one was a specialist, recruited from different worlds and trained in different disciplines. A Rigelian berserker, whose rage made him immune to pain. A Centauri assassin, whose reflexes bordered on precognitive. A cybernetically enhanced Martok, whose limbs had been replaced with military-grade combat prosthetics. The rules remained the same, announced Grex, who had recovered enough from his shock to resume his duties. No weapons, no external enhancements, no outside interference. Maya raised her hand. Quick question about those rules. The arena fell silent. When you say no external enhancements, does that include the cybernetic arms on your friend over there? She pointed to the Martok warrior, whose limbs gleamed with polished metal. Admiral Korex laughed, a sound like grinding machinery. Those are integrated biological replacements, not enhancements. Perfectly legal under arena regulations. Fair enough, Maya shrugged. Just wanted to make sure I understood what I was working with. She began walking in a slow circle, studying each opponent with the focused attention of a predator selecting prey. The 12 warriors shifted nervously, suddenly aware that they were being evaluated rather than simply faced. You know what I love about this? Maya called out to the crowd as she continued her inspection. Everyone always assumes humans are weak because we don't have natural weapons. No claws, no venom, no psychic powers, no cybernetic limbs. She stopped in front of the Rigelian berserker, a mountain of scarred muscle and barely contained fury. But here's the thing about humans, she continued, still speaking to crowd, but never taking her eyes off her opponents. We're persistence hunters. We don't need to be the strongest or the fastest. We just need to outlast everything else. The berserker snarled and took a step forward. Maya didn't retreat. Instead, she smiled at him like he was an old friend. On Earth, our ancestors used to hunt animals 10 times their size with nothing but sharpened sticks. Want to know how? She didn't wait for an answer. They would wound their prey and then follow it. For days. For weeks if necessary. They would track it across continents, never letting it rest, never giving it a moment's peace. Eventually, exhaustion would claim what strength could not. The crowd was listening now, hanging on every word. But we evolved past that, Maya continued. We learned that the greatest weapon wasn't the spear in our hand or the strength in our arm. It was this. She tapped her temple with one finger. The human brain. The thing that let us figure out that we didn't need to be stronger than a mammoth to kill it. We just needed to be smarter. Admiral Korex had heard enough. This philosophical lecture is a fascinating human, but I believe we came here to fight. Maya's expression shifted, her casual demeanor evaporating like morning mist. What replaced it was something cold, calculating, and absolutely terrifying. You're right, Admiral. Let's dance. The word begin was still echoing from Grex's mouth when Maya moved. She didn't charge forward like a berserker or dart to the side like an assassin. Instead, she did something completely unexpected. She grabbed a handful of the sand that covered the arena floor and hurled it directly into the face of the nearest opponent, a Voltari shock trooper whose electrical bioweapons were legendary. Blinded and cursing, the Voltari stumbled backward, directly into the path of the charging Rigelian berserker. The collision sent both warriors sprawling, their carefully coordinated attack formation breaking apart before it had properly begun. But Maya was already gone, having used confusion to vault over the fallen fighters and land in the middle of the remaining 10 opponents. What followed was not a battle. It was a master class in applied physics, biological exploitation, and tactical psychology. The Centauri assassin struck first, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to track Maya's movement. Poison claws swept through the air where the human had been standing, but Maya had dropped into a baseball slide that carried her directly between the assassin's legs. As she slid past, Maya's hand shot upward, her fingers finding the nerve cluster at the base of the Centauri's skull. It was a technique she had learned from studying the pressure points of dozens of alien species, knowledge gathered during her 3 years of enforced residence on the station. The assassin's enhanced reflexes meant nothing when her nervous system shut down. She toppled like a felled tree. The cybernetic Martok swung his enhanced arms in deadly arcs, his mechanical limbs moving faster than biological muscle ever could. But Maya had already identified his weakness. All that cybernetic enhancement required power, and power meant heat. She could see the thermal vents along his spine glowing white-hot as his system strained to keep up. Instead of trying to avoid his attacks, Maya deliberately moved closer, forcing him to increase his rate of fire. His systems redlined within seconds, automatic safety protocols kicking in to prevent catastrophic overload. As his arms locked up an emergency shutdown, Maya casually reached out and pressed the manual reset button she had spotted on his left shoulder. The Martok warrior collapsed as his entire system rebooted. 2 down, she called out cheerfully. 10 to go. A hegemony shock trooper raised his arm, preparing to fire an energy blast from his biocannon. Maya smiled and kicked a piece of broken arena floor directly into the weapon's charging port. The resulting explosion sent the trooper flying across the pit. "Make that 9. The remaining warriors began to panic. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. They were the elite, the chosen, the unstoppable. They weren't supposed to be systematically dismantled by a single human female who seemed to treat combat like an elaborate joke. The Voltari shock trooper had finally cleared the sand from his eyes and was preparing to discharge the electrical energy stored in his biocapacitors. Maya waited until the last possible second, then grabbed the chainmail vest worn by a nearby Draconian warrior and hurled it directly at the Voltari. The electricity arced perfectly into the conductive metal, then traveled down the chain to the Draconian, whose reptilian nervous system couldn't handle the overload. Both warriors went down in a tangle of sparks and unconscious flesh. 7 left, Maya announced. This is actually getting fun. A Regelian shock marine tried to bull rush her, his massive frame moving like a freight train. Maya waited until he was committed to his charge, then dropped to the ground and swept his legs. Physics took care of the rest. 800 pounds of angry alien went flying, crashing into 2 of her companions, and sending all 3 sprawling. 4 to go. Anyone else want to reconsider this life choice? The remaining warriors looked around desperately. In less than 3 minutes, their carefully selected team had been reduced to 4 confused and increasingly terrified soldiers. Admiral Korex was screaming orders from the sidelines, his voice nearly inaudible over the roar of the crowd. The spectators were going absolutely wild. Their earlier skepticism transformed into bloodthirsty appreciation for the human's artistry. The last 4 warriors tried to coordinate their final assault. A hegemony commando with twin blade arms, a psychic warrior from the Outer Rim, a bio-enhanced soldier whose body had been modified for maximum lethality, and a veteran pit fighter who had never lost a match. They came at her from all sides, their timing perfect, their coordination flawless. Maya yawned. Then she did something that would be replayed in slow motion on sports broadcasts across the galaxy for the next century. She jumped, not forward or backward, but straight up, using the momentum of a perfectly timed leap to carry her above their coordinated attack. As she hung in the air for that perfect moment of weightlessness, she reached out with both hands. Her left hand found the psychic warrior's throat, interrupting his concentration just as he was gathering power for a devastating mental assault. Her right hand grabbed the bio-enhanced soldier's weapon arm, using his own momentum to redirect his attack. Gravity brought her back down between the 4 warriors, but she was no longer empty-handed. The psychic warrior's staff spun through the air, striking the commando's blade arms with enough force to shatter the crystalline structures. The bio-enhanced soldier's redirected punch connected with the pit fighter's jaw instead of Maya's skull. All 4 warriors went down in a cascade of friendly fire and biomechanical failure. Maya landed lightly in the center of the arena, surrounded by 12 unconscious opponents and a crowd that had gone completely insane with excitement. She looked up at Admiral Korex, who stood frozen in his viewing box, his 4 arms hanging limp at his sides. "Well, Admiral," she called out sweetly, "I hope that demonstration was educational." The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then the arena erupted. Aliens of every species were on their feet, screaming, cheering, and frantically recalculating their understanding of human capabilities. Credits changed hands in transactions that would destabilize several minor economies. Diplomatic observers scrambled to contact their home governments with updates that would reshape galactic foreign policy. But Maya wasn't finished. She walked over to the arena's central microphone, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet that had fallen over the crowd. "Before we wrap up tonight's festivities," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the arena speakers, "I want to address something that's been bothering me." 10,000 aliens held their collective breath. "You all keep talking about humans like we're some kind of cosmic accident, like we stumbled into space by luck rather than design, like we don't belong out here among the stars." Her voice hardened. "But here's what you've forgotten in all your technological advancement and genetic enhancement and psychic evolution. Humans don't just adapt to our environment." She paused, looking directly at Admiral Korex. "We adapt our environment to us." The implications of that statement rippled through the crowd like a shock wave. Every species here tonight evolved to fit their home world. You develop claws for your prey, venom for your predators, psychic powers for your survival. But humans, we took a world that was actively trying to kill us, and we made it ours. Maya began walking slowly around the arena, her eyes scanning the crowd. Ice Ages, we invented fire and built shelters. Predators, we domesticated them or drove them extinct. Diseases, we learned medicine. Natural disasters, we built cities that could withstand them. Her voice rose, and when our own planet wasn't enough, we looked up at the stars and said, "Those too." The arena was completely silent now, every alien spectator hanging on her words. So the next time you wonder how humans made it into space without claws or venom or psychic powers, remember this. We didn't need to evolve better bodies. She stopped walking and looked directly at the crowd. We evolved better minds. Maya smiled one final time and headed toward the arena exit. Behind her, 12 of the galaxy's elite warriors remained unconscious on the sand-covered floor. "Oh, and Admiral," she called back over her shoulder, "next time you want to test human capabilities, you might want to bring more than 12 fighters." She paused at the tunnel entrance. "Bring 100. The crowd's roar followed her into the darkness, a sound that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. Because tonight, on Station Zephyr 9, in a crowded betting hall that reeked of sweat and alien blood, one human female had reminded the entire galaxy of a very important truth. Humans didn't survive by being the strongest or the fastest or the most naturally gifted. They survived by being the smartest. And in a universe full of species who had forgotten that intelligence was the ultimate weapon that made humans the most dangerous predators of all,